Hi friend, we have a new website live, transfieldguide.com. There you can find episodes with show notes, our resource page, and links to both our Amazon wishlist and our PayPal donation. If you'd like to support the show, please consider a one-time or recurring donation. Every penny helps. The information and opinions presented in this podcast are based on research done at a particular point in time. The fields of medicine, surgery, psychology, etc. are constantly evolving as new studies and movements happen. Please take into account the year of any particular episode's publication, and as new information presents itself, we will do our best to release updated episodes on the topics. Listener discretion is advised for references to medical terminology of body parts. Unless otherwise stated, no one speaking on this podcast is a medical or legal professional and cannot provide medical or legal advice. Welcome to the Trans Field Guide. Today's episode is a continuation from last week's episode, Non-Binary Genders with Harper.
I think a lot of things with non-binary people and a lot of things that people don't really understand is experimenting with gender. And this is just for all trans people, because it's not okay to experiment with gender. You know, like when a little boy puts on his sister's skirt, you know, the comedy reaction is, the boy ain't right, you know? So I really feel like to make the world more comfortable for non-binary people is just to make exploring your gender more accessible. So if you notice your perceived male friend has painted his nails, just be like, oh, your nails look beautiful today. You know, just if you see something and you feel like, well, that's not right, you know, just remember that everybody's presentation is their own and that it's what makes them feel the most comfortable at that time in their body. And another thing, too, is that, like, most trans people question, and most trans people don't find the right label right off the bat. Something that kind of gets on my nerves sometimes is, oh, non-binary, that's a great stepping stone for binary trans people. But sometimes it is, and that's okay. I think that people should be able to explore their gender in whatever way feels good to them. And it really shouldn't be anybody's business how they do it.
And that does also go into that whole concept that your gender identity and the way you choose to present it does change over the years.
Yeah.
And it's really only society that tries to tell us that that's not allowed, that your gender is going to be the same.
It's static.
Yeah, from when you're 0 years old to when you're 100 years old, and that's just demonstrably not true.
Yeah.
To use the age thing as an example, when you're a little kid, you want to go after what you think looks cool or pretty or insert adjective here. By the time you get to be in like your 60s, 70s, 80s, you just want what's comfortable. Yeah. There are certain aspects about yourself that some people know right off the bat. Some people know for a fact what gender they are by the age of 3. Some people don't know what gender they are until they're 53. Yeah. Or later.
Yeah.
And it partially has to do with the availability of different perspectives.
Yeah, and I'm going to stop you here, especially in the trans sphere, because the most often heard perspective is, I slid out of my mother's womb and, you know, they assigned me male, but I knew I was female from the moment I was born. And a lot of people have to use that perspective because it's what's safe. It's what gets them past gatekeepers. It's safe for their own mental health. But it's not true for everybody. One question I get a lot is, like, what's the difference between a trans non-binary person and a gender non-conforming person? And that's kind of like a blurry question, just because I'm not a gender non-conforming person, so I can't really speak. But the way I understand it is that I don't identify with being female, and I make my presentation reflect that. And gender non-conforming people identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth, but more of a different kind of presentation of their masculinity or femininity.
You know, you ask them, okay, well, you're wearing a skirt. Does that mean that you think you're a girl? And they go, no, I'm a guy. And they're like, okay, well, then why are you wearing a skirt? It's like, because it's cute.
We kind of drifted off into gender theory at this point.
Yeah.
Into the story here is just non-binary people are just like everybody else. They just want to live their life as normally as possible. For me, as far as pronouns and not being gendered and stuff like that, whenever I'm at a cashier and then they ma'am me, it hurts a little. But, you kind of have to brush that off because society just isn't there yet. But if it's around people I know, even people I know slightly, and I've told them about my pronouns and who I am, then I expect them to respect that and use them, even if they don't understand it. And I feel like you should treat everybody with that same level of respect. Like if somebody tells you to call them Ding Dong Bonehead, I'm going to call you Ding Dong Bonehead. I think it's a real silly name, but, most people just want love and to belong and kindness and respect, to be treated as human. Because a lot of time feel like even just trans people in general, especially trans non-binary people, very isolated and treated as subhuman. Because that's kind of the steps your brain does, right? Whenever you're afraid or you're trying to respond out of fear, your first step is to dehumanize whatever your target is. And I feel like even in the trans community, there are people who are like, oh, non-binary, that's not a thing. So just if somebody says that they're non-binary and they tell you what their pronouns are, whether they're neo-pronouns like, V and their, or if they're, they, them pronouns, just tell them absolutely, okay. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what everybody deserves. Everybody. And I mean everybody. Another thing, too, that I get a lot of that really bothers me is when I'm looking for support and I tell people about bad things that happen to me because I'm trans. People don't say, I'm sorry they hurt you that way, or I'm sorry you're hurting, or you didn't deserve that. The first thing they say is, oh, well, they'll get what's coming to them. They respond with anger. And I feel like if we all just... I don't want to seem like a crunchy granola hippie and say, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But if we all just treated each other, even cis people who don't understand trans people, or if we all treated each other with a little bit more respect and kindness and gave people the benefit of the doubt, and I feel like the world would be a much kinder place. Oh, another thing that we didn't talk about, this is not something I identify with, but something that we might want to talk about is people who identify as both a binary gender and a non-binary gender. I have known a few people who are like, yes, I primarily identify as woman and I am okay with people viewing me that way, but I am something more, and therefore I'm a non-binary woman or a non-binary man. And then I might kind of bleed into those labels of like demi-girl, demi-boy, that kind of thing. But I have definitely known personally on a close level people who identify that way, and it's definitely different interacting with them than different binary trans people or even binary cis people, because they see me for me more than a cis binary person or a trans binary person would, but we're still almost not the same. But that is a thing that happens. If you want a really good resource for that, there's a YouTuber, Riley J. Dennis is a non-binary trans woman, and she has a really great series, and she has specifically a video describing about the experience that is being both a binary and non-binary gender at the same time. There's like a wealth of information on the internet. Now, sometimes you're going to run into, unfortunately, not so great. I remember early transition, I ran into a post about trying to explain they them pronouns to a cis person. And one of the Yahoo Answers responses were, well, I might as well just call you Your Majesty. That hurt my feelings a little bit.
My punk ass would just be like, yes, that is what you will call me.
He will call me the Majesty of the universe. But there is definitely a lot of really good wealth of information. Uppercase Chase is really good. They're not non-binary, but they have a lot of really good trans, and they have a couple non-binary people come on their show. He's a little bit more...
He's less family-friendly.
Yes, I would say that. I'm trying to think of like family-friendly ones, because some of them are not. Ash Ardell, pretty family-friendly. They do talk about some sex stuff, but, there's a really good... It's actually a sexologist called Sexplanations that does a really good one about questioning. I'm trying to think about just all the resources that I ran into when I was researching ContraPoints, although that is not family friendly.
It's really hard to stay 100% family friendly 100% of the time when talking about transitioning. Yeah, because genitalia is inevitably going to be something that is talked about.
Yeah.
I try really hard on this show, but, sometimes you just gotta break down and use the not medical terms for things.
Yes. Another thing that I'll say that's something I'm seeing lately that has been really exciting for me is being able to see myself in media, specifically trans people, maybe not non-binary people, although that I feel is coming once trans people are more playing trans roles, actual trans actors playing trans roles. If anybody watches Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which is not super family friendly, but there is an actor on there who identifies as non-binary and plays a trans male character, which is exciting that a big kind of series has a big role played by a non-binary person. Just seeing yourself in media. Netflix did this whole series on YouTube about trans people seeing themselves in media. Even characters that are not non-binary understanding kind of like the isolating factors of being trans and stuff like that. X-Men was huge for me when I was a kid. And I think a lot of people understand that you can kind of place whatever minority on top of them and it'll work. But that was huge for me when I was a kid. I was really into X-Men. That show, especially the 90s one, kind of encapsulated what it was to feel like not part of what's normal, quote unquote. Seeing yourself in media is really important. And I'm really glad that we're almost getting to a point where younger generations won't have to go hunting for a representation. It'll just be available for them.
Like this episode? Tell someone about it. Resources referenced in this episode can be found in the show notes at transfieldguide.com. Stay safe, and remember that I'm proud of you.